Before we start, we need to review what these symbols mean. This means I form, you, he, she, it, we, y'all, they. The forward-looking head, it means forward-looking or prospective into the future. Backward-looking head is backward-looking or retrospective into the past. Also, the passive forms we know now. I am blanked, you are blanked, he, she, it is blanked, we are blanked, y'all are blanked, and they are blanked. Alrighty, so we first should probably briefly review how we get the present stem, like woka in this case. Remember, there's two possible rules you can use. The old standard rule is for the first two conjugations to take the second principal part minus re, and then for the remaining conjugations to take the first principal part minus o. But I told you that that is very confusing, and that a better rule to follow would just be to remember that these 5 conjugations follow the 5 rules: long A verbs, long E verbs, nothing verbs, because the stem ends in nothing, short I verbs, and long I verbs. All right, so let's get into the big theory of subjunctives. What are our subjunctives? Well, up till now we have only learned about statements about certainty, what actually happened or what actually will happen in the future. But now we're going to incorporate the realm of possibility of hypothetical, theoretical things. So around this timeline of actual sequence of events, one after another, there's this cloud of possibilities. These are like parallel universes, parallel realities that may have happened, potentially, maybe became real, or were just imaginary. So the word for this is hypothetical. These are hypotheticals, possibilities. Now, up till now, we used what's called the indicative mood for all the certain events, actual chain of events things. You didn't know it as the indicative mood, but that is the technical term for it. So all those tenses you learned up until now were the indicative mood. But now we're going to add on to that a new mood called the subjunctive mood. And this subjunctive mood is used for all these hypothetical possibilities and likelihoods. All right, so in English and Latin, there are 2 different situations based on whether the main verb in the sentence is past tense or present tense. So the first situation is that the main verb is either present or future tense, like I hope that you, or I will hope that you as our main verb. In Latin, this would be petebo ut, or petto ut. Now, if that's the case, then the subjunctive verb will be some form of shall, will, can, may. Either shall, will, can, may itself if it's forward-looking, or shall have, will have, can have, may have if it's backward-looking. We use the green forward-looking head for prospective to signify a forward-looking subjunctive, and the orange one to signify a backward-looking subjunctive. Notice how as the main verb shifts from future to present, the cloud of subjunctive possibilities shift with it. So wherever that main verb goes, any given subjunctive in its cloud is relative to its time. All right, so this is called the relative time rule, that the subjunctive is only secondary, and its exact time on the timeline can only be determined after you determine the time of the main verb, which is primary. So the main verb determines where in time the subjunctive's verb can occur. Notice that as the main verb becomes closer and closer to the present, at times the shall of, will of, can of, may have form here extends all the way back into the past. So even though this is a present or future tense main verb, the shall of action could have gone on back then. Now the second situation that can occur is when we have a past tense main verb. This could be any of the 3 past tenses that you know already. Perfect, like I hoped that you, pluperfect, like I had hoped that you, and imperfect, like I was hoping that you. And there's your Latin forms. If the main verb is any of these 3, then the subjunctive will be should, would, could, might, or should have, would have, could have, might have, based on whether we want to talk about looking forward to a future possibility or backward to a past possibility of what might have happened. Again, here too, this also follows the relative time rule. So the time when the subjunctive occurred is relative to the time when the main verb occurred. Notice that even though that this is a past tense main verb, at times the green subjunctive of it extends all the way into the present or even future tense. You know, if the main verb is close enough to the present, then it could be talking about a should, would, could, or might that's going on now, or even in the future. All right, I'd like you to go through these questions. Here you'll see that I've divided the 4 tenses of the subjunctive. I only put this plus here to remind you that it also includes the future. So present subjunctive looking forward, present subjunctive looking back, past tense looking forward, past tense looking back. Hopefully you can easily fill in this chart based on what you just saw in the previous slides. You can also do these questions down here. In question 4 here, we have now covered all 3 of the 3 moods in Latin. Stop the video and attempt these, and then start it up when you're ready to go on. All right, we have also by now covered all 5 attributes of a verb, which are all the ways that a verb can change. And this is actually something that you should memorize. I want you to try to list from your mind as many of these possibilities as you possibly can. And there are clues over here that you can click on to help you if you are using the downloaded PowerPoint. So stop the video now and try to fill this in, and I will put up the answers shortly. So now you have a good grasp of the concept of the subjunctive. Now we just need to get really good at writing these subjunctives, and that's what we're going to do in this next part of the video. All right, so here we're in the second of the 3 parts of the subjunctives video, and right now we're going to learn how to make all 4 of the subjunctive tenses. And so our first tense is going to be the present looking forward, or prospective subjunctive tense. The old name for this was the present subjunctive, but I use different names because I think it's more descriptive the way I call them, and more appropriate to what they're actually doing. So the way you do this is you take the present stem and you make a vowel change. I took away the A on the first one, but everything else is its stem. And now I'm going to put on E or A, which is also the opposite of the proper vowel for each of these conjugations, because first conjugation should be A vowels, but now it's E, and the rest should not be A vowels, but now they are. So that's the way that works. And then onto that we put our endings. Very simple, nothing special to it. And the translation is shall, will, can, or may. So they shall call, or may call, they may laugh, they may do, and they may hear. Notice the pattern that is made by these vowels. So this is a good way for you to remember what vowel each conjugation gets. There are 2 ways you can memorize it. You can go with the pink letters here or with the green and pink. So just the pink letters is, remember, first conjugation becomes an E, and all the extras get an extra A. The other way you can remember it is remember the saying, Ben read a diary, and that will let you know what the vowels should ultimately end up as. Because the green ones here, of course, are part of the stem, whereas the red ones aren't. So that is an ambiguity, and you can pick whichever system suits you best. Just a reminder here, third IO conjugation is actually treated as if it were fourth conjugation. So facet becomes faciat, like down in the last row, and not facat, like in the third row. As for the irregular verbs, the verb to be, sumus est sunt, becomes a flimsy simicit, shall be, I may be, you may be, she may be. And the irregular verb to go, eo is it, imus itis eunt, becomes eam, eas, eat, eamus, eatis, eant. The E here is the same as in et-o and et-unt. So notice the last one, et-unt, becomes et-ant, and that's the closest change that you can see there. So I may go, you may go, she may go, and so on. As for the passives, you just add on the aristur, murmini, inter endings. Volcare, I am called. Volcaris, you are called. Volcator, he is called. Volcamur, we are called. Volcamini, y'all are called. And volcentur, they are called. And the meanings for that are the standard passive meanings, involving a be blanked in the meaning. All right, so let's compare these now. I want to compare this new tense, the present forward-looking subjunctive, to the future, so that you make the connection in your mind where these two are similar and where they're not. So we're going to go conjugation by conjugation. First conjugation has no similarities. The future with bi is very different from the present forward-looking subjunctive. Second conjugation, also no similarities. But now look at the third conjugation. It's identical in 5 out of the 6 forms. So unless there was some sort of pitch change in the way these two were said, there is no discernible difference between you will do and you may do, which lets you know that this present forward-looking subjunctive is really a kind of future in a way, because may implies something that may happen in the future, of course. Now, as for third IO and fourth conjugation, notice that they are identical in only 1 of the 6 forms. Everywhere else, there is a distinction between you will hear and you shall hear or may hear. All right, try these questions. You want to change the indicative verb to a subjunctive, and I included the conjugation in there. So like no case you know is a long E verb. Also change the translation when you change it into subjunctive. So he drinks should become he may drink, bibat. And if you forgot how to do these, then rewind the video and see how to change each and every conjugation. So do these 9 and then do the next 9 on the next slide and then restart the video and I will put up the answers. All right, so bringing it all together. So we have our 4 subjunctive tenses. We've got active on the top and passive on the bottom. And so the actives, again, were Ben read a diary. And then down in the passives, it will be blanked of whatever was in the active. And the ways you make these are in the present forward-looking. You just tack on the aristur, murmini, inter endings. Alrighty, so bringing it all together, may call. Alright, and then the last thing in this part of the video is irregular verbs. The verb to be and the verb to go. And these do not have a passive, because you can't say I was beed or I was gone. No, no, no. So they only have active. And we have the principal parts of go down at the bottom here now. In our 4 tenses, these are going to follow the expected patterns except in the present forward-looking subjunctive. So there, sum becomes sim, and eo, is, it, imus, itis, eunt becomes eam, eas, eat, eamus, eatus, eant. We shall go. And these 2 are irregular, just in this subjunctive tense only. And the translations are exactly what you would expect. Alright, so now you know all the forms of the subjunctive tenses. All that is left is to figure out how to use them in sentences. And that's going to be the third and final portion of this subjunctives video. This is the third and final part of the subjunctives video, and in this we're going to bring it all together and figure out exactly how to use subjunctives in sentences. And there are about 7 or 8 different kinds of subjunctive clauses, which will take a subjunctive, and we are going to learn them now. The ones above the line here are all forward-looking or prospective, so almost all the verbs are present stem subjunctives. They are the result clause, the purpose clause, and the indirect command. They almost all use uti, so that, or ne, so that not, or lest. So first let's go through the 3 simple subjunctives that were above the line. which are only forward-looking. So they all use uti or ne, so that not, and they all use subjunctives that are forward-looking with a present stem, not a perfect stem. Okay, so next up is the purpose clause in the middle in the pink. This is anytime someone wants and wills to do one thing for another. I'm doing X so that Y. That's a purpose clause. It's intentional, unlike the result clause, which is accidental, unintended. Purpose clause, you intended it. So they worked so that they might repair the bridge. I hope that I may live. I take care lest I may die. Things like this. These are all purpose clauses. Lastly, indirect commands are pretty simple. You should be able to figure these out by now. I command that you may obey. I commanded that you might obey, based on whether the main verb is present or past. All right, so let's try some of these. Purpose clauses. You look first at your main verb. Is it present or past? This one is past. And so the subjunctive clause is going to be relative to that past point. So they worked that they might repair the bridge. They work that they may repair the bridge. We switch into a present subjunctive. Can repair the bridge, shall repair the bridge, will repair the bridge. Uh-oh, what happened here? They work so that they may not repair the bridge, will not. Or the more colloquial and easy way to say it is lest. They work lest they shall repair the bridge. They're maybe putting up all obstacles so that the foreman cannot tell them to get to work. Okay. All right, that's a purpose clause. Almost always uses ut or ne. Lastly is the indirect command. We look at our main verb, and this one is not past. This time it's present. So the subjunctive clause will be relative to that present or future, but in this case present, point in time. So I command lest you may speak. In English we just say I command you not to speak, but we want to include that subjunctive sense in it. So I would like you to say may or shall or can or will. Lest you may speak, that you may not speak. And I commanded lest you might speak, lest you could speak, would speak, should speak. I commanded that you should speak. Okay, that's an indirect command. So how do you recognize these indirect commands? Well, obviously, the main verb is going to have to do something with commanding. And it's not just commanding, though. Commanding is most likely, like all these that you know already, but it could be requesting, because that's kind of commanding. Or begging, I beg, but because that is in a way commanding, though its pressure is much less. And even just something generic like saying could be an indirect command. I say that you shall do this. That would be an indirect command. I write that you should do this. That's also an indirect command. Even punishing and forbidding. I warn you lest you should do this. Indirect command. I prohibit lest you should do this. That's also an indirect command. All right, so hopefully you have a sense now of the kinds of main verbs that can introduce an indirect command. All right, so let's categorize all these 4 kinds of subjunctives that we've learned so far. I want you to tell me what kind of subjunctive it is using those tip-off signs. So remember they were like, for indirect command, one of your verbs of commanding or begging or saying or punishing, things like that. Or if it's neither of those, then it's probably a purpose clause, especially if it demonstrates some sort of willpower of what someone is scheming and intending and purposing to do. That's probably a purpose clause. So stop the video and go question by question and try to decide in advance what kind of clause each of these are. There are 2 slides here, so after you finish this slide, then go on and do the next slide as well. And you also see a reason occur on the far right here telling why it is that particular kind of clause. All right, so that's it. So good luck and enjoy it, and start reading these subjunctive clauses like an expert. Walete.